I ain't worried, Rick Hale. Mojo Monday.
Why would you worry? You're you.
Ever.
Welcome to Monday.
Welcome to Mojo Monday. Hey, listen, our topic today is seeing scars.
Seeing
And
scars.
seeing
Not to be
scars, a little
confused
play
with
on the seeing
stars.
stars, but seeing scars. Yet we always start our call on Monday morning with a little unknown fact by Rick Hale. Did you know?
And scars prompted the did you know? I mean, if you had
Yeah.
a scar and you couldn't see it, is it a scar?
Yeah.
Let that settle for a second. So we did a little research and we've confirmed when the first mirrors were created, the first ability to see yourself and not have someone tell you what you are. You could see full on visual evidence. So I'll share that at the end. So hang with us.
All right.
First
So
mirrors and what
seeing
it's what
scars, seeing
yep.
scars. I think we probably should start our conversation today with a little frame up with this article we've read out of this psychological study from Dartmouth, right?
Yeah, there's a study done in 1980, so it's a reasonably recent study. And the
50
psychology,
years. I don't know.
I mean, modern history. We'll go with that. But it was interesting, and it's called the 1980 Dartmouth Scar Experience, and it's a standout example which uncovers the powerful connection between outward appearances, self-perception, and social interactions. And decades later, it's still a lesson worth discussing. And it showed up in my feed, and I was doing some research just on psychology and the impact of the world. And this fascinating story. And the way it went was these participants in this study were told that they wanted to confirm the impact of social impressions and the way people treat you based on physical deformity. And so what they were told is that all of them had professionally done scarring on their face. And they did it, they showed them, they put them in a mirror and they said, okay, now going forward, we're going to evolve with this to do gradient studies. In other words, the more or less, we're going to change or evolve with this scar. But we want you to go out into the world and we want you to take note of strangers, go to, public places. And how do you feel? And what's the impact of these scars? And overwhelming feedback came that they were, treated with bias and looked at funny and not welcoming. And, the people with scars were, they're reportedly were absolutely biased and people treat them different.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the study is that throughout the day, remember they said they were going to do modifications. Well, the truth is they never walked out with scars. The very first modification was removal of the scar. And so they applied makeup and they made it seem like they were doing things. And my assumption is they weren't given access to a mirror because they didn't know. But interestingly, their bias was that they were treated unfairly and that they were at a disadvantage and were frowned upon or looked down upon. And that's a fascinating reality. And it kind of goes back to that what's on the inside and how you believe. Your belief is truth. And they even went a little further, but I'll stop there for a
Yeah,
second
yeah,
just
yeah.
to
So,
dig into it.
how you see yourself does affect how you perform and it affects how you present yourself in the world, right? So I think of
Absolutely.
this in terms of like business or a sales context, right? Like if I see myself as unworthy, if I see myself as less than, I'm actually going to perform that way. I actually almost have to trick myself into believing something, or I have to do some self work to believe in myself prior to, otherwise, my scar is going to show, is kind of the context of this, right?
Well, it's absolutely going to impact you. And my experience, and we'll talk a little bit later about ways to overcome scars. And by the way, scars can be made up or real. It's irrelevant because scars, and by the way, your scar can be your superpower. So
Yeah.
let that land for a second. Gives you some distinctive, uniqueness that no one else has to separate you from this homogenized world of perceived perfection. And AI is a dangerous tool for a lot of reasons. One is it's not real. And I think the human spirit longs for real. They want validity. They want authentic energy. They want truth, man. We're all scarred. It's just where does yours land and how does it impact you? The more
Yeah.
important question isn't do you have one, it's how's it affecting you. or and this could just be ability and capacity and perception, right?
Yeah. I mean, AI is so interesting. I recorded a video over the last week, put it out on social media, and somebody commented, "Is this AI?" And I was like offended, Rick. I was like, "Wait, no, this is really me." Maybe I don't know, but it created a scar. Like, hey, d does the world not believe that I'm being myself? Because I
Mm.
was, right? But needless to say, I don't want to go down that path. There's another concept that I think we should introduce, which is called this locus of control. And
Mm.
it's actually, if you're ever studied psychology, it's a psychological concept, and it talks about the locus actually is a little bit a derivative of location of control, but basically, it's whether you feel internal factors or external factors have the control over the outcome. So we sit here at the beginning of the year, and it doesn't matter if you're at the beginning of the year or not, it just happens to be that time on the calendar. But if I'm looking at past performance, the results of last year, and I look at those results, Rick, and I ask myself, did I cause those to happen, or did an external force cause those to happen? And
Mm.
for example, external force would be, oh, fate, or it was luck, or some outside person or somebody besides myself caused those to happen, but I didn't cause that to happen by my own actions and choices, right? Those would be my internal locus of control. And I think psychologically, it's a big deal, right?
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I think it comes down to Brett the question of can you replicate the wins and then scale them up? And
Yeah.
that implies an internal locus of control that your external factors like luck or circumstance or, one big client that landed one big deal that, was your payday for the quarter, you know, can you replicate it? And if you can't, it's probably going to be perceived an external force. And if it's an external force, that implies being out of control or happenstance being the force that brought that opportunity. And internal again is as simple as you feel empowered to control your situation. It's an external says the people that have external locus of control believe their outcomes are determined by external forces like fate, luck, and the actions of others. And so how you perceive your success and your capacity to role model a plan, a schedule, how replicatable. That's an internal. That's where you need to live.
Yeah. And I'll throw this analogy at this conversation. It's like, are you looking in a mirror or a window? And if you're looking in a mirror, you're looking at yourself going, can I create my own reality? If you're looking at a window, you're looking at outside forces going, are they going to be in charge of my destiny? Now,
Mm.
sometimes, yes, outside forces play a role. Luck is a factor, right? Like other people are factors. Fate is I don't know if fate's a factor, but those things sometimes do play a role. But the question is, what's the most centered part of the role? Is it me or something out there?
Well, and is your fate inspiring or is it fear based? And when I
Yeah.
say that, what I mean is your fate so happenstance or luck driven that you're fearful that it might not happen again? Or are you confident because you're doing all the right things that produce the appearance of luck? I
Yep.
mean, it's like motivation. Motivation is paramount to success. The source is irrelevant. So you can call it anything you want, but if in the rear view you're not confident that your plan is going to sustain a bigger win this year than last year, you need to rethink how you're self-reflecting and then rethink your plan so that you give evidence to your subconscious brain and that motivational part of your
Yeah.
head and heart that has you, waking up motivated and going to bed inspired, knowing that you're chopping the right stack of wood.
So how do scars play into this conversation?
Well, it comes back to perception. Do you look when you do look in the mirror, does your scar look like your superpower and an opportunity, or are they full of limiting beliefs that you need to figure out ways to shake off, which we can migrate to in a minute?
Yeah. Well, let's go there. I mean, I think a lot of people walk around with scars. I think we're having a human experience, and whether I fell as a child and have a little scar from falling off my bicycle, or I have something in my mind that's scarring, we all have scars, right? But the question is, are those scars in impeding us from finding our best version of ourselves? Or
Yep.
does, as you said, does it become a superpower?
Yeah, is it enabling or disabling? And so part of this just is owning your reality so that you can make necessary self-perception changes, or maybe it's environmental. In fact, the first one is recognize the power of perception. The Dartmouth scar experiment teaches us that our perceptions shape how we experience the world. And by the way, most of what you feel in a given day about your capacity and what's happening is right here. It lives right between your the temples on your head and in your head. It's all inside your mind. Recognizing that the way we interpret events is not always accurate can be the first step in shifting from a self-limiting mentality. The second one is cultivating self awareness, and being self aware is crucial for recognizing your patterns of externalizing blame. Mindfulness, practicing like journaling and medication. It could be medication, meditation. That was a funny Freudian slip. Maybe sometimes medication's a good idea. Consult your professional. But focusing on solutions versus the problem is generally a better path for people with self limiting beliefs.
Yep.
Um, and then taking responsibility for your choices. And sometimes we shy away from being honest when we sit back and recognize, okay, what did or didn't happen in the last season. That if you change that, the decision chain and the focus and the energy, and you shed off some of that external factoring that's weighing you down, you might behave a little differently. You might have a few extra conversations. You might lean into building a war chest of confidence around, new skills, maybe it's again mindfulness or surround attitude and energy. These are all things that you can work on, and taking responsibility for choices that you've made in the past is a tremendous step in the right direction. The other is changing your limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are core assumptions we hold about ourselves and the world that keep us stuck. So, what are your limiting beliefs? What are your core beliefs that may not be helping? They're disabling instead of enabling. And, we're all going to have things happen, Brett. And I have a challenge sometimes with gout, which is a GOUT, a horrible affliction, incredibly painful. And it comes down to diet, and it comes down to, primarily diet, actually, exercise and consumption, and certain things trigger it. And I just spent 4 days in New Orleans, and it's inevitable when I eat rich food. Shell food should be off the list. Red meat should be off the list. I had all of that and a few drinks. We're in New Orleans enjoying the new year, and it hit me. And even with medication, it's a few days of agonizing pain. And there was a moment of like disappointment in myself, and just, I was down, and I was pretending to be happy and okay. And I kind of was, but I kind of wasn't. And then getting off the plane, I think the world gives us cues and clues that our worst day is still easily someone's best day somewhere. And so that's part of the framing that has to come with, okay, so what now what? How do I make something, lemonade out of lemons, or a situation? What's the lesson? And that's a big part of this regrouping and assigning limiting beliefs, proper assignments so that they don't continue to hold you back. And as I'm getting off the plane, there's a fellow that walks off right in front of me, and he was born a little person. He couldn't have been, I don't know, 3.5 feet tall, 4 feet tall, maybe. And, it was obvious that mobility was a challenge. He was heavy set. And I just immediately, because I was aware of it, had the ability to reframe my problem as, thank goodness mine's temporary. Like, and if you can frame all of your challenges as temporary and solvable, you're on the right path. If you want to be a $50 million producer and you were a 20 million last year, that's a solvable problem because someone's done it before you. And
Yeah.
so, and then, and you could say 1 million to 3 million. It could be 500,000. It could be, pick a number wherever you are. If there's someone that's doing it, that's 3 or 4 times in front of you, and you see yourself in the positive light of capacity to control situational opportunities, now you're looking at it the right way.
There you go. And whether your scar was gout or maybe that person's scar was something else, right? Like the reality is everybody has some kind of scar. It's how you process that and how you respond to that that is the power, right? It's
Yeah.
or the lack of response would be the limit.
Yeah. And in no way do I, it would be a false assumption for me to think he doesn't have a perfect life.
Yeah,
Like, who am I? That's his perception. That's his, his worldview is his and his paradigm. And in fact, there's someone right now on the planet that would trade places with him immediately for the opportunity to walk, even
yep.
if it's a struggle. At least, embrace the struggle. And that may be where your superpower lives because you do have legs and you have capacity. It's a beautiful thing when you frame things in positive ways and then honor the good. And then you don't let the bad affect your next decision or the things that look like limiting situational things.
There you go. So one, you got to see your scars. Two, you got to let your scars become something of power, not of limit.
Yeah,
And then the third thing is you've got to make a conscious decision that your future, your reality comes from internal locus of control and stop giving the power to the external. Stop giving it to something outside the window and give it to the person staring back at you in the mirror.
that's right. And stop assuming that everyone's highlight reel and social media is fact based. They've got scars that they've just done a good job manipulating with technology and a narrative. But if that's how it, hats off to people that have found a path to feeling better about themselves. But the more real you are with your scars, I think that your subconscious brain knows truth, and you just got to give it evidence that what
Yep.
your situation is absolutely appropriate, and it's an opportunity and not a detriment. There's two more that I put on the list beyond theirs, and one is hang out with achievers who are out to get the most out of life. It changes things. The environment you're in. People that wake up with an achievement mindset look at scars as opportunities. They look at a baseline for improvement. They look at, not what is, but what could be. And those are the people that you need in your world. And the last is be a force of positivity. If you want to improve your mental state and your self image state instantly, go share and show love and kindness and thoughtfulness. And, funny how evidence, I was like, well, how do I prove that, today or share a point of reality? And I got a text this morning. I don't know about you, but my number of
I get them
messages,
all the time.
I get them from strange. Well, I know we get texts, but from people you don't know that are like some 780 number. And I know it's a bogus text trying to get me to respond so they can initiate a conversation and sell me something. But this text was unique and it said, have you smiled today? If not, let me give you one. And I thought, oh my gosh, junk mail. I immediately wanted to hit send to, report as fraud. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, Brett, because it was
Yep.
such a thoughtful, kind, and I immediately couldn't. I smiled, and I'm like, you know what? We complicate things that don't need complication. At the end of the day, your experience is right here, right now. Make it good, show love, and watch the magic begin to happen and improve when things don't look great. And again, not to take away any of if your problems could be very real and very almost terminal in some situations, and I respect and honor that. But even inside of that, if you can find the silver lining or the opportunity to help someone else see things a little differently, you'll ultimately feel a lot differently.
I love it. Well, Rick, I'm just sitting here wondering how we would have done our hair this morning had we not had a mirror to look at. You know what I mean? So tell me this story about the mirrors.
Brett, the assumption is you had a mirror.
I understand. There you go.
That was good.
Yeah.
It looks great, dude. You always have the trendiest, coolest hair. I admire it. And so the question is, when were mirrors first introduced? And it was 6,000 BC. There was a material called obsidian. I guess it still exists. I'm not sure where we use it in the current modern world, but it was a naturally occurring black volcanic glass that was ground and polished to create reflective surfaces. And then it was in the 13th century that they figured out how to actually polish and create what is perceived more of a modernized version of a mirror and again a version of glass. But my thought was you solely could rely on what the external world told you about yourself. Like you'd have no concept other than maybe tactile. And, you know, and I'm like, is that better or worse? And I think it all comes down to how you get to decide every day what's better, worse, or great. And my hope for you today is that you choose greatness and you recognize whether it's a scar or an asset, we're blessed, highly favored, and have opportunity to make that great.
But on what day should we do that?
You should do it every day, but we're going to start today because it is Mojo Monday.
Mojo Monday, Rick Hale.
We love you guys. Call us if you need a boost. Let me be your first smile today.